So in this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to make just a little screw top. You can add this to any desktop organizer or just have it as a little storage container that you want. So we're going to go through and we're going to make it initially without the threads, and then we'll make another one with the threads, but it's basically the same idea. So this is roughly what it will look like at the end, and we'll put some little designs on it here. And let's get going with this. So I'm going to create a new design. So let's go to new design and we'll create a clear window. So like everything else, we're going to create a new sketch. And I'm going to pick my plane I want to sketch on. And I'm going to do a full center diameter circle, starting at the origin. I'm going to make it 100 just because it's going to make our math easy to do. You can make it any size that you want. And we're going to hit enter. Okay. And I'm going to finish that sketch. I am going to extrude this one, and I am also going to extrude it a distance of 100. Just also for the simple reason, easy math. Alright, I'm going to move this down just a little bit so I can see the top pretty clearly. And I'm going to then zoom out just a little bit here. There we go. And I'm going to hollow this top out because I want to make a container. So I'm going to use my shell tool. I'm going to click on the top face, and I'm going to make it 3 millimeters for the inside radius. Okay. So that means my inside radius here is going to be 100 minus 6. All right, so that's going to be 94. So that's going to be an important number to remember. All right. So now let's go through and make my little top that I want to make that will set down on top of it. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to move my body here, and I'm just going to move it out of the way because I want to get back to my origin. So I'm going to click on my little move icon. My move window pops up over here. I'm going to get my bodies, make sure I move my object as a body, and I'll get my little moving trajectory icons that are all set up. Right, I can rotate it, I can move it up and down. I'm just going to move it off to the side. Primarily, I just want to get to my origin here again. So let's say OK. Alright, so now I'm going to create a new sketch. Okay, I'm going to sketch in the same plane that I sketched in originally because that's going to just help me line things up. I'm going to make a new circle. I'm going to sketch it at the middle. Okay, and so this one I'm going to make as a diameter of 95.5. Okay. Why I'm making it 95.5 is depending on the filament that I'm going to 3D print this with, I'm going to want to make sure that it fits. So I'm kind of taking into account the expansion of my 3D filament print. So that's going to be the outside radius of my inside of my top. And I am going to sketch another circle that's going to be on the inside. Right. And I'm going to make this 90.5. Okay, so I'm going to have a 5 millimeter kind of distance here. So now what I want to do is I want to just extrude in between those two things. So I could have done this as an offset, right, or 2 circles. So there's a number of ways that you could have done this. Okay, so I'm now going to finish my sketch, and I'm going to click in between, right? So I'm going to highlight that ring. I'm going to extrude that, just that ring, and I'm going to extrude it 10. Okay, you can extrude it 15 if you want it to go a little deeper. Maybe I think I might do that. Okay, so that's going to be a new body, 15 millimeters. Boom. Okay, that's what's going to fit inside my top. Okay, now I'm going to want to have a little overhang for this. So what I am going to do is I am going to create another sketch, and this time my sketch I want to have is going to be right on the top of this ring, because I'm going to have a flat base on top. So I'm going to click that, and I am going to create a new center point circle, and this time I'm going to create circle, center point circle, and I'm going to extend my circle out. Let's say, let's see what 105 looks like. Maybe I'm going to make it 110. Just have it stick out a little bit more. And I'm going to hit enter there. Okay, and I'm going to click finish sketch. And that's going to be a plane that's going to set on top of my little ring there. Now I'm going to extrude that. Now one thing you have to be careful when you're doing a sketch on top of circles that are rings or other things like that. Notice when I click one part of it, it's only going to extrude that. So I have to make sure that I get all parts of it. So I'm going to have to click in 3 places here, and that's going to make sure I collect everything, because Fusion 360 wants to make sure that you're selecting the right thing to extrude. And so notice I can select the inside, I can select just the ring there, or I can select just the outside, but I want them all. Okay. So I'm going to extrude that, and I'm going to make that go another 5 millimeters, let's say. And I'm going to click OK. Oh, whoops, I missed one. I'm going to go extrude. And there we go. Now I got them all. So let me scroll up, make sure. Yeah, all right, now I got them all. So we're going to extrude all of them by 5. Hit enter. There we go. Because I missed one. There was a little hollow hole there. All right. So now I've got my kind of my little top, and you can decide if that's going to be thick enough for you or not. You know, I might make that just a little thicker. So I'm going to extrude that whole surface again, maybe another 3 millimeters, just to make it just a little thicker. And I'm going to join that with the former one, so that will make that whole top one be 8 millimeters total. Okay, so now this top is one complete body. Alright, now I probably want a handle or something on this, and so there's lots of different ways that you can make a handle. Okay, so we can go up to create, we can make a handle as a sphere, so I think that's what I'm going to do, so I have a little sphere that I can grab. So I'm going to create sphere, and we're going to create a plane that we might want to sketch it on. So here I could have created an offset plane to start the sketch on. This time I'm just going to pick a plane, and I'm going to put that same plane that I've been sketching in. Okay, and now my circle I'm going to put right on the center point, and notice it puts it right in the middle. And I'm going to make sure it's not a cut. I want it to be a new body, because I'm going to want to move this sphere up some. Okay, so I'm going to, when I choose move copy, I'm going to choose bodies, and when I click my sphere, I'm going to move it up a certain amount. Okay, and you can kind of move around and see where it's going to be inside, and I think it might be a little easier to sketch on. Okay, so I think that might be okay. Alright, so now I've got a little handle that I can kind of grab, and so 25 centimeters might be a little small, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize it here. I'm going to scale it a little bit. And so I'm going to select my sphere. I'm going to select the point that I want to revolve, scale it around, and sphere. And I've got my point selected. I'm going to make it 1.25, 25% bigger. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Perfect. Alright, now it's a little off center, so now what I want to do is I'm going to want to align these guys. So I'm going to align them. And when I move my align over, there's going to be a little center point there. Boom. And I can just align them perfectly again, and I can click OK. So now it's back in the center. Okay. And I'm going to remove him up again. And there we go. Alright. So I can click OK. Alright, perfect. Alright, so I think that might be how I might want them. It's pretty easy to grab something that big. Now, another way that I could have resized that sphere is down here on my timeline. I could have gone back in my timeline, and there's my first sphere that I added. I could have right-clicked on that, and I could have chose Edit Feature. And then that would have taken me right back to the original model, and I could have changed my editing feature, and I could have immediately have changed this size to be 30. And let's watch what happens. Let's say I changed it to 50. That propagates all the way through all the changes. Right? So don't forget about this little timeline. So sometimes that's an even faster way to change it. So 50 is way too big, but I kind of like it being about 30, 33 or something. I think that's going to be a little bit easier to grab. Okay, 25 millimeters, about an inch. Okay, yeah, maybe that's going to be too big. I'm going to change it back to 25. Let's say, no, 30. Let's go with 30. 30 it is. Okay, and all right, perfect. All right, I don't think I have a preference if he goes down underneath of there for this demo. I think I'm perfectly happy there. Awesome. All right, so now I've got my top, I've got my cylinder that I want. You know, you could decide that if you want to make our top to look a little cooler, you can always add chamfers to that, and that's pretty easy in fillets by clicking on the fillet tool. There we go. So I added a little fillet there, things like that. You can add fillets to your cylinder as well, you know, things like that. Okay, you could add another fillet to underneath. Again, just kind of making it look a little pretty and taking care of those little sharp edges that sometimes happen when you 3D print something. Okay. Alright, so that all looks pretty good. Okay, so now we want to align these two guys to make sure that they fit. So one of the things that you can do in Fusion 360 is you can convert these guys into components, and then we can use the symbol tools to be able to see how they look like when they go together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some joints in these guys. So I'm going to go up to a symbol, and I'm going to create a joint. Oh, oops, sorry. First I need to convert these into components. So I forgot to do that step. So I'm going to select both of my sphere and my top, and I'm going to combine these guys into one component just to make it easier for me. So I'm going to highlight them, and then I'm going to go up under modify, and I'm going to combine. Alright, and that's okay these. So he's one component, and he's one. So now I can go over here into my browser menu, and I'm gonna right click, and I'm gonna say create components from bodies. I've got component 1, and then I'm gonna do body 2, and I'm gonna create components from body. So now I've got 2 components. Okay. So now when I hide those components, boom, boom, they can disappear. But now I can use these components to join. Okay. So now I'm gonna go up to assemble. Okay. And now I can create joints. Okay. So I'm going to just create a pretty simple joint here. Okay. So we're going to create, when you look in here, you've got component 1, component 2. We're going to create a simple joint, and we're just going to create a snap component just so that I want this guy to sit here on the center of this guy. So I'm going to rotate around a little bit. Okay. So see, when I move over, it gives me kind of different places where I can snap it to. So I'm going to select right here at the top. So it's going to snap. And now I want this guy where I want him to be right here underneath. Okay. Because then I'm going to want the top to snap to the center of that component. Okay. And so now I think we're good. Look at that. All right. And then they move together, and I can see how they fit. All right. Which is kind of cool. All right. So now I've made a little container with a cylinder. I've got a little handle. All right. So I'm feeling pretty good about this, so I can click OK here. Okay. And now if I want to move my top off, again, I can just go move copy. I can choose what I want to do. I can choose components, or I can choose bodies. All right. So I'm going to just choose bodies here, and I'm going to click the body that I want to move, and now I can move off. Okay. So before we add threads to this guy, okay, what I want to do is I want to add in kind of the outside decoration. Okay. All right. So now let's add the outside decoration to it. So we want to have the decoration on the outside of our little cylinder here. So what I want to do is I want to draw stuff on the cylinder, and I'm just going to create a repeating pattern on my cylinder. So the easiest thing is to create an offset plane, and we're going to create a tangent plane on the cylinder, and I'm going to draw on that plane. So let's create a tangent plane. So notice it's tangent to my cylinder. Okay, and it's going to ask us for a reference plane, and I'm going to pick the reference plane that is, you know, parallel and in the vertical direction to my cylinder. So there we go. And okay. All right, so there's my tangent plane. That's what I'm going to draw on. Okay, so I am now going to go to create. I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to pick that plane to draw on. All right, and I am going to draw all the way up to kind of where that chamfer is, and I'm going to use, let me move my little recording icon out of the way. I'm going to use the spline tool. So I'm going to go up, and let me zoom in just so it's a little easier to see, and move my guy down. Okay, so you can kind of see where that curvature where I put in my little fillet. Okay, so let's go in, and I'm gonna to start doing my little spline tool. All right, let's say right about here. Okay, and I'm just going to create this little pattern that's gonna go down in fix that here in just a second. And I want to make sure that my final dot hits the bottom. Okay, and I'll hit escape when I'm done, because I didn't like where that last little plane hit. Okay, so I'm gonna draw a new little sketch here. Okay, and I'm gonna want to move one of these little dots here. Yeah, because you can always rearrange your splines as you see fit, and I'm just gonna kind of make it a little bit more how I want it. Okay, yeah, let's go with something like that. Okay, let's make this one a little more out, and I'm gonna move this one over. Yeah, okay, let's say that is good enough for our little spline tool, and I want that one to hit the bottom. Alright. Okay, so that's my spline tool. Now what I need to do is I am going to make sure, since I had to do both of them, we're going to copy that, and by right clicking on it, and then we're going to paste that, and it's going to ask us where we want to move it to. So I'm going to move it over about 2 millimeters. Okay, and you can precisely put it where you want by typing in the distance and clicking OK. Now, one of the challenges that, since I do want to refill this, you're going to need to connect the endpoints with a line, and you're going to need to do that at the top and at the bottom. And so you'll just need to go in and make sure that you connect the top and the bottom together. Okay, and you might have to do some zooming in to make sure that you've got the lines connected and that you've got a line drawn, because sometimes it can be a little hard to see that you've actually got the line connected. Alright, that's that line at the top, and let's go down at the bottom and make sure I've got my line connected. Okay, so I'm just going to put another line down here. Alright, so there's that one. You draw the line over. And you hit escape once you draw the line. And you know you've been successful when you can highlight it and you've got a shape that shadows in. And then you can finish your sketch. Alright. 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 So now I've got my sketch here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this. Okay. And my first extrusion I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure it's going to go to my object. And what I'm going to do is say my object is going to be my plane. Okay. Okay. I'm going to make it a new body because I don't want it to merge yet, because I want it to wrap around. Okay. And let's click OK. Okay, so that makes sure that it is always connected to my object. So now let's zoom into this. Okay, let's orbit. Oops. There we go. Alright, look at that. It is now connected the way that I want. Okay, and now you can adjust the size of it if you wanted to. So I could go back into my select tool. I can now decide if that's, if I wanted it to be thicker or less thick. on how I want it to, I can always click on that surface right there, and I can either extrude it, right? I can now make it go inwards or outwards, right? I can extrude it more, or I can extrude it less, right? If I want it, I could do an embossing now of my little cylinder if I want it to, but I think I'm going to leave it as is. But again, you can adjust it if you want it to. So I'm going to click cancel. Now what I want to do is I am going to create a pattern that's going to wrap this whole body around my cylinder. So I'm going to go to create, I'm going to create a pattern, and I'm going to create a circular pattern. Okay, I'm going to select this body, and you also can select it over here on a browser menu, and my axis is going to be my cylinder. All right, and you can select as many of these as you want. All right, so you can make it as dense or as less dense as you want, and you can click OK. All right, now what we're going to do is this is inspected here and make sure that nothing came off of our cylinder. Yep, everything looks firmly attached. So now I have a pretty happy design. Pretty cool. All right, so now what we're going to do next is we're going to make some threads. Okay, so fortunately in Fusion 360, making threads is actually pretty straightforward. And so what we're going to do is I want to make threads on the inside of my cylinder and on the outside of my top. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the create, and there is a thread tool. Okay, so we're going to click threads. All right, and you can generally go with a lot of the defaults, but we're going to make sure we're going to turn off full length thread, because if you click the full length thread, notice what happens is it puts threads down the entire length. So it's very good if you're making a screw or something like that, but we don't want to do that. So we're going to make sure we turn that off, and we're going to make this 15. The reason why it's going to be 15 is because the height of the inside of our little top was 15. Okay, and I'm just going to go with our defaults. You can change these and then you can adjust as you need it. So I'm going to click OK. Bingo. All right. All right, so now I've got some threads, and now I'm going to do the same thing over here to my top. So I'm going to click on the outside face. I'm going to go over here to create thread, and it should remember, and if you forgot, you can always click this little remember size, but this is the original starting size for ours and the ones that I used last time. But you can always click remember size and it'll remember the last thread that you used, and you can click OK, and there's threads on that top. So now you have a little top that you can screw on and screw off. Alright, and again, remember that if you don't want that, you have them, but now you can go back in your timeline and you can either, delete them, save them, right? And now you can save this, you can export this as is, you can export it with our threads, without the threads. Completely up to you as you guys see fit.